for better days to come and carry us like wind in our sails. Hold on tight, I can smell the shore, it's right in front of us if we just hold on tight. This vision that I saw is getting closer every dawn. We are dreamers of the shore. 7 years now on this boat, and we all know where we belong. Just wait. For our home to show on the horizon, soon we'll be there. Hold on tight, I can smell the shore, it's right in front of us if we just hold on tight. This vision that I saw is getting closer every dawn. We are dreamers of the shore when we can't read the sky. We just sail with the wind that we've got. And when we're drowning in doubt, just keep on believing.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Fraoch Knits. This is a knitting podcast. It's episode number 10. And my name is Anya, and I'm coming to you from the west of Ireland, and this is where I live and spend a lot of time knitting, and I work and I raise my almost teenage son, Ruben. And yeah, so you're all really welcome here. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you'll enjoy the next hour or so. I have a little cup of Melissa tea to keep me calm while I'm podcasting, yeah, so nice calm vibes from a lovely herbal tea. So I hope you have a hot drink, and or a cool drink if the weather's hot where you are. And yeah, so sit back and relax and enjoy all of the natter about knitting, my knitting. That has what I've been doing over the last month or so. So just by way of introduction to, although I know I have lots of new viewers, thank you so much to all the new people who have joined the channel or who have subscribed, and thank you to returning viewers. Thank you for all the comments, thank you for all the likes. I'm actually really blown away this time by the exposure that my last video has had and the number of people who've liked it, so I'm really thrilled with that. So welcome to all the new viewers. You're all really welcome here, and I also want to say a big thank you and a big shout out to Leanne of the Knitty Stew podcast. So Leanne is based in Canada, and she's a stewardess that films her knitting podcasts in the places that she visits when she's working as a stewardess. So it's just a fabulous podcast. I've watched it from the very beginning and I've really loved it. And Leanne mentioned my name, Fraoch Knits, and a little bit about podcasts, some lovely words on her last episode. And so that has really increased the number of people who found out about my channel. So thank you so much, Leanne. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the support. And yeah, I'm absolutely delighted. It's so lovely to be able to share my knitting, my love for this craft, and my love for everything, all things Irish, all the culture and the folklore that I also do at the end of every podcast. So if you're not interested in that section, then you can just watch the knitting, which I start with. And but if you are, you can stick around to the end, where we'll be talking about this week about St. Patrick actually. So, and the Shamrock. So yeah, there's actually a load of stuff to get through this week. I can't believe the month end. Yeah, it's been a month since I did my last podcast, and I was away for a week in the middle, so I didn't actually get anything finished. I have no finished objects to show you, but I have a few ones past finished objects from last year, and a good few works in progress to show you, and some future knitting plans. And I also have, I'm going to be talking about St. Patrick and the Shamrock, because next weekend, Friday, is the 17th of March. So, and as you all probably know, it is a worldwide festival at this stage. St. Patrick's Day is celebrated all over the world, particularly in the United States, being a big place, and in Ireland, of course, it's such a big festival, and it has become bigger than it ever was, even when I was growing up. So it's a great way to celebrate being Irish. And I'm also going to talk to you about the title of this podcast actually is Knitting for the Banshees, and I'm going to tell you the amazing story of Delia Barry, who is the knitter behind the amazing authentic vintage knitwear that is worn by the actors on the by now very famous film The Banshees of Inisherin, directed by Martin McDonagh, and up for nominations for the Oscars, which are happening tonight. So it's all very topical, and I'm delighted to be able to tell you a little bit about her story. And I'll be telling you, if you wait till the end of the podcast, that's when I'm going to be talking to you about that. So before I get into the knitting, there's one last thing I want to tell you, and that is that there is a CAL going on called the Irish CAL Knit Along, which is being organised by Sophie of Shamrock Yarns. So she's based in Doolin in County Clare, and she's an indie dyer. So she's organised this CAL for anybody who wants to knit a project that uses indie dyed yarn from Ireland, or uses a design, a pattern that either crochet or knitting that is made by or designed by a person who's living in Ireland or who's based in Ireland. So that's a really exciting CAL. There's a cast-on party happening as well on the 17th, on March the 17th, St. Patrick's Day, between 8 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. And if you want more information about that, if you go onto the Irish CAL group on Ravelry, or if you go into Instagram, if you don't do Ravelry, if you go into Instagram, you can find it in at Fraoch Knits, at Shamrock Yarns. Excuse me. I'll have all of these labels and details down below. So it's at Shamrock Yarns is Sophie's Instagram handle, and it's also being co-organised by Diane from Dublin Knitworks, and so I'll give you her details for getting in contact with her on Instagram as well. And yes, so it should be a really fun knit along, and I hope you can all join in and celebrate being Irish and St. Patrick's Day, and promote Irish yarns, or indie dyed yarns, and promote Irish designers as well at the same time. So it's a really, really good idea, and I'm hoping to be part of the cast-on party, fingers crossed, if I'm available at the time. So that's all for the introduction. As well as that, I'm going to show you some footage of my holiday. I went skiing in Italy 2 weeks ago now, and it was the most amazing time. I had a fantastic time, absolutely brilliant holiday. And there was plenty of snow, and myself and my two brothers went to a place in the north of Italy called Bormio, which is about a 3-hour drive north of Bergamo, which we flew into with Ryanair, great for cheap flights. So we got there cheaply and managed to have a really, really good holiday. So that's one we haven't done. All three of us have not small children, they're now teenagers, all of our children, and now that they're grown up a little bit, we decided we would go away on our own on an adult holiday and just leave the children behind, which was great. To get away from the responsibilities of parenting for a week was absolutely fantastic, and it's a place that we used to go to in our 30s, so we would have actually been to Bormio several times before, and it was just really lovely to return back there and to experience such an amazing Italian mountain town. So not just the skiing was great, but the food is incredible, the people are fantastic. I just love Italians, I love the culture. I spent 2 years living there actually when I was in my 20s, and I've kept returning back. I have good friends who live there, and I really love the country. So enough of that, anyhow, we'll get into the knitting. So I have a few things to show you today. I've no finished objects as I was saying, but I will show you what I'm wearing. So this is a design by a designer, and now I'm actually blanking on what part of the world she's from. I think she is either Dutch or German or Danish, or sorry now for all those people who are from that part of the world and for confusing which country she's from, but her name is Ankestrick is her designer name, and I have knit 2 designs by her, and I'm currently knitting a 3rd one and was considering knitting a 4th, but I am not sure about that. The jury's still out as to whether I will go with a 4th design, but sometime in the future it's definitely there. So this design is, as you can see, it's a very topical colour. It's my spring colour. This is Spring Green Heather, I think is the name of the wool from Iceland. It's Lettlopi. So it didn't get featured in my last month's podcast, which was all the Lopi sweaters. I actually forgot that I had this one as well. This was knit about 2 years ago, I think, and when I knitted I actually wasn't doing the stretchy bind off, so it's the only issue with this particular design that's not absolutely what I would like. It's not perfect, but I love the design. Its features. I'll stand up and show you what it looks like. So it's got a little bit of a gorgeous hem on it, beautiful ribbed hem, and it has a fabulous ribbed collar. And the buttons go all the way up to the collar and down, and there's a beautiful ribbing for the button band. So the button band is really simple. It's just a ribbed band. You've got this gorgeous, I think it's called a contiguous shoulder design. I love Ankestrick's shoulder designs. The way she treats the shoulders in her garments, it makes them really flattering, certainly on me. And I found these fabulous buttons, so I will button up, show you what it looks like when it's buttoned up. They go all the way up to the top, but you can just wear it like this and all the way down. So these are gorgeous little pink buttons that I found in a fabulous little shop at Haberdashery down in Clifton in County Galway during, I don't know, around the time that I was knitting it, and it took me a long time to put the buttons on, but once I did, I absolutely love them. And I've just found that this colour combination of pink and green keeps recurring in the work that I do, in the knitting that I choose to do, and I love it, all different shades and combinations. But yes, this is my spring sweater, and it's actually really warm. It's quite warm here today. It's about 8 or 9 degrees Celsius, warmer than it has been recently. We had snow last week. And to wear a Lettlopi sweater is, at these temperatures, is just getting a little bit borderline too warm. It's perfect if I was outside, but not inside the house. So that's my Ankestrick design. I highly recommend her patterns. And the other one I'm going to show you, also by her, a past knit that I did. This was knit in 2020, so nearly 3 years ago now. It was August 2020, so 2.5 years. And this is a pattern of hers that does use the contiguous sleeve. A beautiful way of having a lovely transition from the body of the sweater to the sleeve. It's also got these gorgeous false seams that are made just by doing one purl stitch. I mean, it's such a simple design. And this was knit when I knew nothing at all about gauge, nothing at all. I was just really at the very beginning of sweater knitting. My first projects were shawls because I chose them because they were easy in terms of only no shaping and not worrying about gauge at all. So this is one of my first sweaters, and as you can see, the gauge was, I was knitting the large size in her pattern, so I ended up with the XXL size in terms of the actual, in terms of the width of the finished bust circumference is the XXL size, but actually it's so flattering on that the oversized look looks absolutely amazing. I adore it. This is actually my most worn sweater, and the yarn is it's Old Centrum. It's my favourite yarn, one of my favourite sort of what you might call the workhorse yarn. It's absolutely indestructible. and it's got this gorgeous, it's Gotland, I think Gotland sheep. So it's got this gorgeous sheen, and yet it's rustic, and it's a sport weight. So I knit this on 3.5mm needles. And so this is the one. Oh yeah, the other issue that I had with this is the collar. So the collar is supposed to stand up, and this one always rolls down like this or flops around, and I still haven't got round to doing something about it. Now I could actually have it so that I would fold it over like this and sew it down, and I think ultimately I will do something like that, or put in elastic or something. But anyway, it's a gorgeous sweater. I absolutely love it. It's my, it's just my go-to throw-on sweater, and it has been for the last 2.5 years. And actually, there are signs of the elbows wearing thin, but it's just, I don't know if you can see that there, it's just a really good, hard working yarn. I'll eventually have to repair that at the elbows there, or at least I should reinforce them actually before the holes develop in them. The other thing that's worn a lot is I actually have holes at the sleeves. I don't know if you can see that, but I need to repair that. So this is the one that I was thinking. Sorry, did I tell you the name of it? It's called Childhood. So it's Childhood by Ankestrick, and in Old Centrum. And I don't remember the actual name or number of the brown colour, but I'll put that in the description below so that you have that. So yeah, that's I can't remember what else I was going to say about it. It is yeah, one of my favourite sweaters by Ankestrick. There you go. That's 2.5 years ago and still going strong, and I wear it all the time. Okay, so I'm wondering what else I was going to talk to you about. Just have to have a quick look at the notes. So there are my two finished objects. Oh, I know where I was going after this. I was going to talk to you then about the current work in progress that I have, also by Ankestrick, by the same designer, and you've seen this before. This has been on the go since I started podcasting last July, so it's absolutely crazy. This is still sort of on the back burner, if you like. It's going away in the background, and I finally finished it down to the hem. So the ribbing is done and everything, and I started doing the cast off on the hem, and it looked terrible. So it was flaring, it was doing all sorts of things that I didn't want it to do. It looked really, the pattern I think just asks you to bind off knitwise, I think it's what it says. So I tried binding off with the stretchy bind off that I usually use, and it just looked terrible. And then I tried binding off as the pattern asked knitwise, and it looked awful. So my only, I think, solution is to do an Italian tubular bind off, and but I just didn't have the patience for that when I decided that's what I was going to do. But anyway, progress is being made, and this is going to be the most amazing. This is going to be just a beautiful cardigan with a zip down the front. And it's funny because I found a photograph of myself when Ruben was a tiny baby, so from about 12 years ago. 12 years ago, and it shows me wearing a knitted cardigan, that's a ribbed cardigan with a zip that I absolutely loved, and it must have eventually worn out or got too small for me, or I gave it away. I don't have it anymore, but this is reminding me of that beautiful cardigan that I had, especially the ribbing in it. And actually, because the cabling is so subtle, it's almost like a ribbed sweater, a ribbed cardigan. So I'll put a picture up of me wearing the old cardigan with Ruben as baby. We're making pasta together. So that was, yeah, I think that's where the inspiration for this particular pattern came from originally. And the yarns here, if you haven't seen me talking about this before, I've talked about it a couple of times, but they're De Rerum Natura Ulysse and the beautiful Ito Sensai, I forget it's a silk mohair, Ito Sensai. So that is another fabulous design by Ankestrick. All of her designs fit really well. They're really just sweaters that you will wear every day, and I think that's why I find them harder to knit, because they're all one colour, there's no colour work, they're all the same pattern all over, or else just plain stocking stitch, and sometimes that gets just a little bit tedious. But anyway, it's working away in the background, and that's going well. I'm going to get back to it actually. I've got distracted because I've been working on a project that's absolutely addictive, and that is the a shawl. So it's a shawl by Vera Valimaki. So I've only recently discovered Vera Valimaki's designs, and I absolutely love them. She's really a favourite of mine, I think, at this stage. So the shawl that I chose to knit by her is called the Big Spite shawl. So there's a story behind this particular project. So this is how far I'll put up a photograph so you can see the designers. This is as far as I have managed to get with it. You can see that there are stripes. I hope you can see that there at the bottom. So this shawl is knit in brioche stitch and garter stitch and more garter. So brioche and garter basically the whole way through. And I absolutely adore the design. It's called Big Spite because of it's named after a gemstone according to the information on the front page of the pattern. Big Spite is a gemstone. So I was attracted to the pattern actually originally because of the colour of the yarns that Vera Valimaki uses. And I wanted to use colours that I had bought when I was in Amsterdam last year, and they are these two colours. They are a really beautiful pink from Walk collection. It's got linen in it, and this is Eggplant, a colour by the yarn by Malabrigo, and it's a fingering weight. And I was going to pair these two with this white, or not white, it's called Pewter by Life in the Long Grass. So this is the original idea that I had for this shawl. And when you see the photograph of the one that's shown on the cover of the pattern, you'll see why I was thinking of the pink. She uses a pink and a green. But when I started it, so this is my swatch for starting that shawl. And when I started it, I got this. Hello again everybody, and you're very welcome back. I was just gone for a few minutes there because I was trying to sort out my camera. So yeah, I was in the middle of telling you about this amazing shawl by Vera Valimaki, the Big Spite shawl, and I was showing you the final colours that I had chosen, which were different to what was in the pattern. So the pattern was, or at least what the designer had used on the cover of the pattern, which is the beautiful pink and green. And of course, as I was saying, pink and green are my chosen colours a lot of the time, and I was going to use this pink and this eggplant or aubergine colour in the shawl. So I didn't, in the end, I went back to the drawing board and I ended up using these three colours. So this is Tiller, they're all Life in the Long Grass, Tiller, Pewter and Rose. So these three colours, I hope you can see them there, that they're in focus, but they're absolutely stunning. Life in the Long Grass merino singles, 100% merino, superwash merino singles, and I think they've turned out absolutely stunning in this shawl. So the story behind the colour, anyhow, I had decided pretty early on in the week. It was literally just a tiny swatch that I had done in these other colours that weren't working together. The pink and the pewter didn't work. And yeah, so I was thinking, I need to know a little bit about this gemstone Big Spite that the shawl name is called after for the podcast. So on Friday, I think it was Friday night, I decided I'd look it up. When I was getting tired of knitting, I said I'll do a little bit of research here and see what can I say about the gemstone. So anyway, I googled it, and what came up? Only the colours that I actually have in this shawl. This is what the colours are apparently of Big Spite. They're these really, it's sometimes called a ruby emerald or a scarlet emerald, I think, and it's a really, really rare gemstone, apparently 1,000 times rarer than gold, and it's found in Utah, I think, in the Wawa Mountains in Utah, and mainly that's the majority of it is found there. But the colours are this scarlet red colour with seams of white going through it, I think of quartz going through it. And the deeper it gets to a really, really deep red, and the deep red starts to look like a brown colour, like this really sort of earthy, peaty, turfy type of brown. So it was just one of those Twilight Zone moments where you go, oh my god, I actually chose the colours of the gemstone that the shawl is called after. Now maybe there are other varieties of the stone that have a sort of a pink and green colour. I don't know where Vera Valimaki got the idea for the pink and the green, but certainly these colours, I mean, I love them anyway, regardless. And I love the brioche. So, and they are the colour of the gemstone. The brioche is something new to me. I had never done it before. And I had done double knitting before, though. I meant to show you, I haven't brought with me I haven't gathered it for the podcast, but a scarf that I knit for Reuben. I'm knitting two versions of it actually. They were, I think, Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw scarves, Harry Potter scarves that were knit in double knitting, and it was double knitting colour work. So that was really, really complicated. My head was completely fried for the time I was knitting them, but I had made the commitment to him, so I had to figure it out. So that was about, I'd say, 2 years ago I knit them as well. But I'd never knit brioche, and actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do the MCAL last year with Stephen West was because I thought, oh, this is going to be a great opportunity to learn how to do brioche. But as it turned out, he didn't have any in this particular year in 2022. So I decided recently, when I was getting a little bit bored of the patterns that I was telling you about, the sort of plain ones, the ones that are all the same colour, that there's no change throughout the pattern, and it takes a lot of effort, or it takes a lot of sort of stamina to get through them, but then the finished result is absolutely stunning and you wear them all the time. And I just wanted something really frivolous and different, and something new, so I decided I'd do this shawl with the brioche. So the brioche stitch is, I mean, the resulting stitch is absolutely gorgeous, and I know everybody says this about it. It's really squishy, it's really comforting, it's going to be gorgeous around my neck. But also there's a stunning sort of rhythm to knitting brioche. When you get into it, it's different to the garter stitch. It flows differently, so that even though you have to do each row twice in brioche, I don't mind, because I actually really like the rhythm. And yeah, it's working out great. I adore the colours. So I'm almost halfway through. That's a week's knitting. I can't believe, I mean, it just shows you how engaging this project is. But of course it's taken me away from all the other things that I should be doing, so, because I really like it. So I highly recommend the Big Spite Shawl by Vera Valimaki. And then on to another work in progress. So you've seen this one before as well, and I haven't made any progress. Well, sorry, I have made some progress on it. It's the half and half triangles wrap. So this was brought, finished halfway through a row, which is a bit mad. So this was brought with me to my holiday in Italy, my skiing holiday, and I actually ended up doing very, very little knitting. The only time I was knitting really was in the airport, going out and coming back, and a tiny little bit. I brought it with me most days in my little backpack when I was skiing, but I didn't do, I think I took it out once when I was sitting in a cafe to knit, but most of the time I was just enjoying being there. And just a really great holiday of being in the outdoors, really crisp mountain air, gorgeous sunshine, fabulous food, great company, so what more could I ask? So the knitting really didn't feature. It was a break from knitting, which was quite good. But anyhow, I'm pleased with the progress that I'm making on this shawl. I'm really enjoying, this is my second half and half triangles wrap. And I know that Jana of Finnish Knitting Stories was she's knitting one in Kremka Soul wool. This is knit in it's a free pattern by Pearl Soho. Most people have heard about this already, but if you haven't, it's a free pattern available on the Pearl Soho website. And this is being knit in linen quill, which is a Pearl Soho yarn, a fingering weight yarn with a lot of alpaca, 35% alpaca, 50% Highland, Peruvian Highland wool, and 15% linen. And it's really soft in spite of the sort of high linen content, but I put that down to the alpaca in it. But having said that, the Kremka Soul wool is, I think, less linen and more wool, but no alpaca. And it's a little bit, so I'm going to show you another finished object, I suppose. You've seen this before if you've watched my previous podcasts, but this is my last half and half triangles wrap. So you can see this is the Pearl Soho Bright Flamingo, and this is Kremka Soul wool, and it's a blue colour. So the Kremka is actually a little bit rougher. This is a soft, the linen quill is a really, really soft yarn. It's absolutely gorgeous and really drapey. The linen quill is pretty drapey as well, but it's a little bit rougher. And the reason I went for linen, sorry, the Kremke sole wool is rougher. The Kremke is from Europe, it's German I think, and I was trying to be a little bit more environmentally friendly and not ordering yarns from the States, and so I was looking for something local. And actually a really good one that I've come across now, this leads me into an acquisition, a surprise acquisition that arrived on in the post during the week, was this absolutely beautiful yarn here. I'll show you. This green yarn is Life in the Long Grass, and it's linen merino singles. So it's 10% linen and 90% superwash merino. I mean, the colour of this is absolutely stunning. It's called Grove. It's a really, really beautiful green colour. I hope that's in focus there for you now. But it's as soft. So this is a linen as well. This has got linen in it, and it's, I suppose, the equivalent of the Kremke, but it's just so much softer. It's so much nicer. So actually, if you were going to knit like for the likes of Jana from Finish Knitting Stories, if you're watching Jana, I watch your podcast all the time. It's really brilliant, but this is a really good European substitute. It's Irish Life in the Long Grass, dyed in Cork, in County Cork in Ireland, by Lettlopi Caroline, who very, very generously sent me this yarn during the week. And not only did she send me the 3 skeins of linen merino singles, she sent me these 100% merino singles. This one is Halcyon, beautiful purple. This one is Amethyst, and this one is Crush. And they all, so I think you can see where Caroline got her inspiration for which yarn colours to send me from the name of my podcast, which is Fraoch Knits. But these are perfect heather, Irish countryside heather colours, the green of the heather stems and the purple and white. There's also a white heather as well that grows in a species that grows around here. So there's a white and there's a purple. And the browns in this as well. I mean, everything about these yarns are Irish countryside. They're absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, so that's my major, unexpected, really, really welcome and delightful acquisition that arrived in the post this week from Life in the Long Grass. So I highly recommend their hand-dyed yarns. And if you're going to join the Irish Cal this starting this Friday, the 17th of March, why not try a half and half triangles wrap in the 10% linen and 90% merino, the linen merino singles. That's a great idea. Or you could even do an Irish design using these beautiful, beautiful yarns. There are so many brilliant Irish designers, and they're listed, by the way, by Shamrock Yarns have listed the designers and the indie dyers that are based in Ireland in her Ravelry group. And if you just put in, I think you click on community and put in Irish Cal, and all of the information, the thread comes up there, and you'll get the link to the cast on party in that group as well. So really, really exciting times. I don't know what I'm going to use these for, but it's going to be some really special project that I have to take a long time to think about. I'm not going to use them straight away. I'm just going to let them settle and let them sit for a while and let me just have an idea, get ideas for how to use them, because they're so precious, they're so special to me. So yeah, so they're my half and half triangles wrap projects. Life in the Long Grass linen merino singles is a great substitute for Pearl Soho linen quill if you're living in this part of the world and you don't want the air miles. I think it's a great one. So yeah, that's about it for the, oh no, I knew I had one more work in progress actually. So this is a half finished sock. This is a design by Linda Dubeck, I think is her name, and the name is Aran. This is a free pattern on Ravelry. The title of the pattern is Aran, A-R-I-N-N, which in Icelandic means, I think, hearth or fireplace. So they're just gorgeous, really chunky. I mean, this wool, okay, so the wool is an acquisition as well. I mean, I wasn't going to be getting any yarn this year, so but as things go, I always pick up something when I'm on holidays. So this gorgeous, gorgeous sheepy natural wool jumped out at me in a shop window in the little town of Bormio where we were skiing. And I couldn't resist it. So I didn't buy that much because I didn't have much space in my suitcase, because when you're flying Ryanair, it's really difficult to have room in your suitcase. And anyway, so here we are. I brought home 4 skeins, 2 of each colour. So this is made in the north of Italy. It's called, the website is silke.it, silke.it, and it is 100% pure wool, virgin wool, and 100 grams is 150 meters per 100 grams. So it's sort of, I'm not sure, is it an Aran or chunky, or it's knitting up more like a, this pattern is actually for an Aran wool, so, and it seems like it's probably working out okay. I mean, I think it's probably around an Aran weight, or maybe slightly heavier than that, a heavy Aran. It's made in Grassobio, which is near Bergamo. We passed through Grassobio on our way between Bergamo airport and the town of Bormio where we were skiing. So really local Italian wool. I mean, to be honest with you, it looks so like Lettlopi. It's very like Lettlopi, only it's a bit heavier than that. So I'm really having great fun knitting these socks, even though socks are just not my thing. I actually find the amount of brain power it takes to knit a heel on a sock is makes it really like work. Whereas when I'm knitting the shawl, even though it's a brioche shawl, I sail through it. I just love knitting shawls and jumpers. Anyway, this is good. So I decided here to do more white at the bottom of the heel, which isn't, okay, so this pattern is actually all just one colour all the way through. And I was putting white here, and I'm going to put white on the toes. And I actually had to do sort of I had to bring the yarn around, so the white yarn is brought around the top of the foot here inside, and I've caught it like you would capture floats in a colourwork project. But I'm not really that happy with it. I'm going to actually rip it back because it's too bulky. I put the sock on and this part is too bulky. You can see there, I don't know if you can see that the inside is full of, it's too heavy, the yarn, to do that with it. It's full of the floats, which are caught underneath. But anyway, I like the pattern. It's very simple. It's a free pattern. So 4 by 1 rib, and this is a simple single stitch rib heel, so knit 1 purl 1 rib heel, and it goes through. I'm not sure how the toe is finished. I think it's a Kitchener stitch finish on the toe. Anyway, these are going to be really toasty and really gorgeous, and I love the colours. So the colours of this wool, this all natural, and it's undyed. So basically this is number 1, and there are 5 colours, and they range in to, this is number 4 in the range, and they're just mixes of different colours of natural wool. So all the browns and the blacks mixed with the white at different ratios to produce different shades of brown. Basically it goes from white to a very, very dark brown. So this is number 4. So yeah, my favourite type of wool, really woolly and really, really adorable, really gorgeous. Okay, so I think that's the end of my talk of works in progress. So now I was going to just talk to you a little bit about some knitting plans that I have, and they are 2 projects. So for 2 projects that I'm definitely going to do, and they're both trying to use up yarns that I have in my stash. And one is a very recent pattern by a designer from New York called Tori Yu, and it's called the Downtown Hoodie. And I was really inspired to knit this by Amanda from the Birch and Lily Knits podcast. So she was a test knitter on this for this design, which is literally just hot off the press. It's just come out. And yes, I'm going to show you the yarns I'm going to use. It's called Anthracite is the colour. So it's a black yarn that I've been trying to find a project to knit with this yarn since I bought it. I think this must be in my stash now 3 years, or heading for 4 years, and it's one of my favourites. It's Ullcentrum, the Swedish yarn that I knit the childhood sweater out of that I was showing you earlier, the brown sweater. And this is the really, really black anthracite. I ordered this by accident actually. When I was ordering, I really wanted a dark grey, and I somehow pressed on the button for anthracite, so I got this black. And at the time I wasn't really that keen on it, but every time I look at it now I go, oh my goodness, there's such character in this. And I wanted to, I started knitting another project with it, and it just didn't, I'm finding it hard to gauge that would suit sport. This is supposedly a sport weight yarn, but actually it's knitting up more like a DK, but it's somewhere in between the two, and finding a project where I can get both the row gauge and the stitch count right is really difficult, but I'm just going to go for it now. And so this row gauge is 20 stitches and this gauge for the downtown hoodie, it's recommending a DK weight yarn with 20 stitches and 30 rows, and I'm getting on my sweater, my brown sweater, I got on 3.5mm needles 20 stitches and about 34 rows. So the row gauge is slightly off, but I think I'll be able to adapt to that. And I'm going to pair this with a grey, which I actually haven't got out to show you, but it's basically a medium grey of the same yarn of Old Centrum. So that is what I am going to do the downtown hoodie out of. I'm really looking forward to it. I love the idea of a hoodie. I did knit a hoodie for myself before, but I gave it away because it was in a sort of a light coloured yarn that I just didn't like the colour of on me, and so I gave that away. So I'm really inspired now by Amanda from the Birch and Ellie podcast. If you haven't seen her, you should look at her podcast. It's another really one that I could highly recommend. And it was episode 126 very recently that she talks about her test knit of the downtown hoodie. And the other project that I'm really looking forward to knitting is going to be using my Le Petit Lambs wool, the Biche Bouche, and it's a Vera Valimaki design that I'm going to knit with this, and it's called the Still Light Tunic. It's a dress, and I'm not really one to wear dresses, but I did have a dress very like this. Hello again, and yes, I was caught in the middle of telling you the story of my final future project or future plans, and that is for using up my beautiful Le Petit Lambs wool, which I got in The Hague just before Christmas. And this is it's a beautiful fingering weight yarn, and it's dark grey is the name of the colour. And I have 3 skeins of this, and I am planning to knit another Vera Valimaki design, and it's called the Still Light Tunic, and it is the most amazingly beautiful, simple, clean lines dress. So I'm not really one for wearing dresses, but I did have one very like the shape of this particular design years ago that I absolutely love to wear. So the lovely thing about Vera Valimaki's designs is that they are simple, they're clean, classic designs, and that this particular dress looks amazing on everybody who knits it. I mean, there's nearly 4,000, I think there's 3,700 and something projects on Ravelry of this design. It came out in May 2010, so it's been out a long time. And the design just looks amazing regardless of what figure type you have. So I just think that it's really well worth committing to. It's a big project to commit to. It's a lot of yarn, it's a lot of time, it's small needles, but I'm really encouraged by looking at the projects that other people have knit and how well it looks on everybody. So yeah, so it's another Vera Valimaki design that I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into, and who knows, might be ready for Christmas. It'll be a nice tunic, be a lovely dress to wear at Christmas time. So yeah, that's my future plans for my next project and for using up stash yarn. So this was bought in The Hague before Christmas. I have 3 skeins of it, and I think I'll probably have to buy another 6 to make up the difference in the yarn, but that's okay. I don't mind adding to my stash as long as I'm using up some of what I've got. So I'm looking forward to that. Don't hold me to it, but I think I will do it. Between that and the downtown hoodie, I'll be kept going with projects. So thank you so much for listening to and for being with me and sitting with me for the duration of the knitting content of this podcast. And if you don't feel like listening to the culture section and the history section, Irish legends and whatever about the Shamrock and St. Patrick, well then you're very welcome to just click off now. And but before you do, if you haven't already subscribed and liked the content, if you like it, please do so. That would really help me. So thank you very much, and I look forward to see you again in future if you're not sticking around. And for those of you that are, then we'll get straight into talking about St. Patrick and the Shamrock. So again, I am using. Did I keep the book here? Sorry. I am using this amazing text book. It's called Ireland's Wild Plants. I've shown this to you before on previous podcasts, and it's written by Niall McCutcher, and it is myths, legends and folklore associated with Ireland's wild plants. So today the focus of the wild plant that we'll be looking at is this beautiful sprig here that I've got, keeping it alive in a little bit of water, a bowl of water. So this is, as you all know, you probably all recognise this, it's Shamrock. So Shamrock is, it's the national emblem for Ireland. It's on everything from our national airline to our rugby team to, it's in every tourist shop that you walk into. You can get everything and anything covered in shamrocks, from cups to plates to jewellery to tea towels to hoodies to whatever. The Shamrock is our national emblem, and we sort of take it for granted actually because of that fact. Well, here's Gotto coming to say hello to me today, coming to take part in the podcast. So so the Shamrock is our national symbol, and because of that we sort of take it for granted. And actually there's a whole sort of history and background to it. I mean, we associate it most with St. Patrick. So St. Patrick is our patron saint, or he's one of our patron saints, because the last video I did, I was talking to you about St. Bridget, and St. Bridget is also a patron saint and is now recognised with her own public holiday. She used to sort of take second place to St. Patrick, but she is actually one of our patron saints. So St. Patrick is the main person anyway, and the main saint. And the 17th of March is supposedly the day that he died. So he was a 5th century saint, and he is supposed to have used the St. Patrick's Day. The 17th of March happens on the day of his supposed death, although that's not certain, but that's the day we celebrate, and we celebrate everything Irish, not just the saint, not just St. Patrick. So St. Patrick is associated with the shamrock because he's supposed to have used the shamrock, which is 3 leaves. So you can see from the plant here that there are 3 leaves to each of the little stems. It actually looks a little bit like cress. Botanically it's clover, it's actually white clover. So he used these 3 leaves to teach the Christian concept of the Holy Trinity, of there being 3 spiritual figures in one. So there's the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. So all of these 3 are part of the one God. So that was how apparently what he used. This is what we're all taught in primary school. This is very much part of our culture, that the shamrock was used by St. Patrick to teach about Christianity, because he's supposed to have been the person who converted, he came to a pagan Ireland and he converted it to Christianity. So that's where that comes from. But I've, since reading this amazing book by Niall McCutcher, I have learned something new about shamrock, and that is that the origin of the word, where does the word shamrock come from? And it actually means young clover. So shammer is the Irish word for clover, and oak is the Irish word for young. So shammer, oak, shamrock. So that is the origins of the word. And so it's young because it's springtime, and actually these little few sprigs that I managed to find in my garden, it grows everywhere. It grows everywhere in Ireland. It actually grows all over the world, even though some people will contest that. They'd say shamrock only grows in Ireland, but that's not true. It is simply white clover. I'll give you the botanical name now in a second when I look it up. But I got these in the garden yesterday and I put them in the water overnight just to preserve them, and it's growing everywhere, but it's actually quite small at the moment. The leaves are tiny, so it was sort of hard to pick it because they're spread like a carpet on the ground, on the earth, on the surface of the earth. So yeah, so that's where the name comes from, Shamrock, young clover. And it was only, so we associate St. Patrick with a shamrock, but actually none of his own writings from his lifetime or any of the biographies of his life that were written, say, in the 7th century or the few hundred years after he was living, none of them actually tell the story of him using the shamrock. So that's something that only developed much later. It wasn't until 1726 that story is actually written down. But it's a lovely story. It's become part of our mythology. It's become part of the identity of Ireland is the shamrock and its associations with St. Patrick. So originally in legends and pre-Christian mythology, the shamrock was a sign of prosperity and a sign of fertility. So again, we have this idea of spring. It's young shamrock, it's young clover, it's very, very early spring. It's all about the coming back of fertility. And it really represents the prosperity and fertility of the Irish landscape of Ireland. And St. Bridget of Kildare, who we talked about before, St. Bridget, decided to stay in the Curragh of Kildare, an area of Kildare. She decided to stay there because she saw before her a delightful plain covered in clover blossom, and she was determined to offer it to the Lord. So it was really her, part of her story is the fertility of the land, and her associations with the goddess, the pre-Christian goddess, is about fertility, and the shamrock is part of that story as well. So that occurs in her legend. And then the Lawer Gawala, or the Book of Invasions, tells of the Firbolgs. So these were the early inhabitants of Ireland, very much pre-Christian. And according to legend, before they even arrived in Ireland, they were in servitude to the Greeks, and they were forced to carry bags of clay on their bare backs to make the clay on the bare rocks. They're forced to carry to put clay down on bare rocks to make them fertile. And in time, as a result of their efforts, the rocks became plains under clover flowers. So clover again appears. So the shamrock then wasn't known as shamrock, it was known as clover. It was described in myths and legend as clover, but it became known as the Shamrock. It was then known as the Scotch Hemrock from Shammer. 1571 is the earliest appearance of the word shamrock. So that wasn't until the 16th century that the word that we now use for clover, for young clover, came about, was coined. So some are adamant that shamrock is not clover and that it is unique to Ireland, and some even hold that it will not grow anywhere else other than Ireland, and it will die and wither if transplanted. But this is botanically completely untrue. So the shamrock is indeed young clover or trefoil. There's no difference between the two, and the species can be found growing all over the world, growing wild all over the world. However, nowhere else in the world is young clover given its own name, shamrock, and venerated as somehow representing the soul of the country, which is the case here. So in that sense, the shamrock that grows in Ireland is indeed unique. There are lots of stories then of the customs that grew up around wearing the shamrock, wearing the green on St. Patrick's Day. And I will tell you some of those. The best known Irish custom is the wearing of the green. When Irish people the world over sport a sprig of shamrock to honour the patron saint, and to show that they are Irish. So this is something that's a custom all over the world, and in fact we have the Irish Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of the country, going to the United States every year to present a bowl of shamrock to the President of the United States. So it's a huge symbol, there's huge symbolism in the shamrock for our identity and for our connections with particularly with the United States. So the there just in early writings there are accounts of these customs. So the English traveller Thomas Dyneley made the following note in his journey in, I think he was travelling in 1681. So in the 17th century, he said, the 17th day of March yearly is St. Patrick's, an immovable feast, when the Irish of all stations and conditions wore crosses in their hats, some of pins, some of green ribbon, and the vulgar superstitiously wear shamrocks, or shamrogues, three-leaved grass, which they likewise eat, they say, to cause a sweet breath. And then in 1726, in a botanical work by the Reverend Dr. Caleb Threkeld, he identified the shamrock as white clover, Trifolium repens, which is actually what is growing in my garden. So he says, this plant is worn by people in their hats on the 17th day of March yearly, which is St. Patrick's Day, it being a current tradition that by this three-leaved grass he emblematically set forth to show them the mystery of the Holy Trinity. So that's the story that we have grown up with, and it really only appears then. That's the first reference to it in 1726, to St. Patrick using the shamrock to teach about the Holy Trinity. And then he says, however that may be, when they wet their shamrogue, they often commit excess in liquor, which is not a right keeping of a day to the Lord, error generally leading to debauchery. So he really didn't agree with the excessive drinking that went on. Even then, even in the 18th century, St. Patrick's Day was known as a day of drinking to excess, which actually it sort of still is. Having said that, it was, when we were growing up, when I was a child, it was known as a holy day of obligation. So it was a holy day, which meant that you had a day off from school, and it was a national holiday anyway, so you would have had a day off. But you had to go to Mass, so we would go to Mass in the morning, and then immediately after Mass, there would be the St. Patrick's Day parade going through town, and you would stand out in the freezing cold. The 17th of March is always freezing cold, and it's always wet and windy, and often hailstones with hailstones. We never have anything nice like snow, like white landscapes. We just get this really windy, miserable, wet weather that you just don't want to stand around in. But invariably on the 17th of March, that's what we used to do. And we used to wear a St. Patrick's Day badge. I mean, they're talking in one of those traditions of wearing a cross in a pin in your hat, which is a tradition that's died out. That doesn't happen anymore. But it does show the relationship with this being a holy day. So it's associated with Christianity. So part of the festivities was to have a drink to honour the saint, known as wetting the shamrock. So that goes back to the 1720s. And at some stage the idea took hold that the shamrock worn that day would be dipped or drowned in the drink. So we have this expression, drowning the shamrock. And then it was eaten afterwards. So I think it became a legend, or it became a thing that in British literature, that the Irish ate shamrock as at this time, or certainly pre-17th century, but actually that's thought to be a misunderstanding of this custom of eating it on St. Patrick's Day after dipping it in whiskey. So they talk of the Hibernian people feasting with shamrogues steeved in ishkebaha meaning whiskey. And there's also a custom of the shamrock, of drinking the drink and throwing the shamrock over the left shoulder. And then we move on to what I find absolutely fascinating, is the idea of the magic behind the four-leaved shamrock, or the Shamrock Nagara Gluas. I'll put this text down here so you can see. Nagara Gluas means the four ears, the shamrock of the 4 ears, or 4 leaves. So this was really lucky because of its rarity. The possessor of such a shamrock was believed to gain a host of supernatural powers. So whatever he undertook would prosper. He would achieve wondrous things. He would have luck in gambling and racing. He could not be cheated in a bargain or deceived, and witchcraft would have no power over him. And this practice of owning the shamrock the 4-leaved shamrock, would enlighten the brain and make the possessor see the truth. But to keep these powers, the possessor had to carry the shamrock about their person and must never give it away or show it to anyone else. So it was believed that this four-leaved, very, very lucky shamrock grew where an ass had foaled 3 times, or where a mare had dropped her first foal, or where a cow or a mare had been born. And these were all the folk customs associated with the four-leaved shamrock. The shamrock and clover in general, whether it be four-leaved or not, was thought to keep away evil influences. In one folk tale, a healer called Furanan O'Fergus used a mixture of clover, mountain heather, whiskey and shamrock to try and drive out an evil spirit which had gripped a man with fever. In Britain, the leaves of red clover were worn to ward off witches and warlocks and bring good luck. So you can see that this notion of good luck and the luck of the Irish and those connections with the shamrock are really strong going back in time. The notion that cattle particularly enjoyed grazing in fields of clover led to the phrase that someone was in clover when they were doing well in life. So then the question has arisen in the past, what is the real shamrock? And I've alluded to this already. What botanical species is recognised by Irish people as being the shamrock? And 2 surveys were done in the past, one in 1893 and one in 1988. And they both produced very similar results. So in that period of 100 years, nothing had changed. For most Irish people, the shamrock is one of 2 species. It's either the lesser trefoil, Trifolium dubium, or the white clover, Trifolium repens, which is what I've got here. So this is white clover, Trifolium repens, and this is what I recognise as shamrock. And it's growing not just in Ireland, but all over the world, as I've said before. So that's really all there is to talk about, to tell you. I mean, the thing is that there are so many myths and so many legends. I've just given you a flavour of them, and they're all to be had in this incredible book. It's such a storehouse of information and on myths and legends. And if I was to go into them all here, it would take. So hello again, and I'm going to finish off this podcast now with just a few more little bits of information about St. Patrick, and then about the wonderful knitter behind the Aran, or the Gansey knitwear in the Banshees of Inisherin, the film that's up for nominated for several Oscars. So just a little bit about St. Patrick. So we've talked a lot about the shamrock, and of course St. Patrick is so connected with the shamrock, but just I suppose a little bit about who he was. He was a 5th century figure and has become the patron saint of Ireland. He was supposed to have introduced Christianity to Ireland and to have used the shamrock to explain the concept of the Holy Trinity to the pagans, to pagan Ireland. He is patron saint along with Bridget, as I've mentioned already, and when he was actually born in Roman Britain, so it was the end of the Roman era, Roman rule in Britain at the time, and he was living, we don't know where exactly, it hasn't been confirmed where he grew up, but they think somewhere along the west coast of Britain, and Wales was what we were always taught when we were in school, that he was picked up by, captured and kidnapped by pirates and brought to live as a slave in Ireland, and he worked as a swineherd in various different parts of the country, including in Armagh. And when he was about 16 at this stage, so he was at a very young, influential age, and he spent 6 years, so between the age of 16 and 22, and then in Ireland working as a slave, and then he managed to escape and returned back home to England, where he became a cleric, and he was called back to Ireland. So he had this dream that he should go back to Ireland to convert the Irish, and so he became the first primate of all Ireland and Bishop of Armagh. So he was, or the first Bishop of Armagh really, and the primate of all Ireland. So, and he was supposed to have died on the 17th of March, and that's why we celebrate St. Patrick's Day on that particular date. So that's who he was, and I have never thought of looking up the origin of his name actually, and which is amazing because my own father's name, my dad's name is Paddy, which is what most people in Ireland who are called Patrick are known as. So he was born the day before St. Patrick's Day and was called Paddy for that reason. But I've never looked up the name, and I have a cousin called Patrick, I have a nephew called Pádraig, so it's a very, very common name here, and for obvious reasons. And it turns out that the name is of Latin origin, and when you think about it, he was living at the time of Roman Britain, so Latin would have been the language of the day, and the name was a given name, it wasn't his birth name, and it was from the Latin patricius, which means nobleman or patrician, or father of the citizens. So the Romans were divided into commoners, or plebeians and commoners, and patricians or aristocrats. So he was an aristocrat. He was given the title, or he gave himself the title to show that he was of noble birth, and therefore, I suppose, worthy of his role as a major figure in the introduction of Christianity to the country. So nobleman or noble person is a beautiful meaning for the name Patrick, or Patricia for a girl. So there are lots of Patricias. I had an auntie who was called Patricia, Auntie Patty. So we have several Patricks. So there's 4 Patricks, or Patricia, and 3 Patricks, Paddy, Patrick and Pádraig in our family. So that'll show you how common the name is. So I thought that was an interesting thing to find out. Something I'd never really thought about before. That's what I love about doing these podcasts. I'm finding out so much information that I never have thought about before, just to research them and to share it with all the wonderful viewers out there in YouTube land. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, and it's very, very topical because it's to do with an Irish film directed by Martin McDonagh, called The Banshees of Inisherin, and set in a fictional island off the west coast of Ireland in the 1920s, just at the end of the Civil War in Ireland, the Irish Civil War in 1923. And this film is up, it has been given many awards already, film awards all over there for various different reasons, or various different types of award, I think including Golden Globes, and but it's definitely nominated for several Oscars, and they're happening tonight, so we might even be staying up late to see what happens. And it's also exciting that there's another film called Colleen Kuhn, The Quiet Girl, which is also really well worth watching. It's the first Irish language film ever to be nominated for an Oscar, so it's dual language, it's both English and Irish, and it's a beautiful, beautiful film, and they definitely deserve to win an Oscar, as does Banshees. The Banshees, the story that I'm going to tell you now is connected to knitwear, so it's really interesting for all you knitters out there, and it is the story of the woman, Delia Barry is her name, who knit the sweaters for the actors that appear in the Banshees. And she is 83 years of age, so she's a phenomenal knitter. She's been knitting all her life, but apparently when she lost her husband, unfortunately, in 2010, she started to really, really knit full-time. And she knit to donate money, to sell items, to donate money to the Greystones Cancer Society. So she's from Greystones in County Wicklow, originally Clare in County Tipperary, but living in Greystones, County Wicklow. And she was headhunted by Emer Ní Mhaildaunig, who is the costume designer for the Banshees of Inisherin, and Emer got Delia Barry to design the sweaters and knit them on the basis of photographs that she gave her of fishermen from the 1920s in Ireland. So, and I mentioned this in passing actually in my podcast about the history of the Aran sweater, which if you haven't watched you can go back and look at, which touches on the fact that there are no so-called Aran jumpers, there are no cream, heavy, thick Aran knitwear in the Banshees of Inisherin, because it's really authentic, because they didn't exist in the 1920s. And what did exist at the time was something akin to the British or UK a fisherman's gansey. So Delia Barry was given the task of actually looking at these photographs, so she examined them with a magnifying glass and then came up with patterns that she wrote herself. She knit them without a pattern basically. So phenomenal woman, a phenomenal knitter, and she knit 4 sweaters for the film. So there was the navy roll neck that Colin Farrell wears, there's the red pullover with the long collar, that really a distinctive one that Colin Farrell also wears, and a thick blue knit that Brendan Gleeson wears, and a purple fisherman's rib that Barry Keoghan wears. So 4 of them, or 3 of the main characters in the film, the 3 main characters. And the idea behind it was that these sweaters, well, certainly the one for Colin Farrell's character would have been knit by his sister in the film, and it was so. The Emer Meanwhile Downing, makes the point that the knitwear has to tell part of the story of the character, and it's felt that the red one in particular with the collar on it, would have been knit by his sister as a gesture of love and protectiveness, and that wrapped up in the collar and the boyish length of the sweater, of the collar, that these would have been very much akin to Colin Farrell's type of character in the film, which was innocent and naive. That's the whole point of the story, is his naivety and his innocence are really central to not the point of the story, they're central to the film's plot. So just shows you how important the design of the costumes is, and to have an Irish woman in her 80s knitting these with no pattern, just from a photograph, is really something special. So the information that I'm giving you here, you can come across it if you want to read more about it in an amazing article in the New York Times called A Knitwear Sensation at 83. So you can read about that yourself in more detail. There's the other really interesting thing to say about it is that all of those costumes were then distressed. They were artificially aged to make them look older. So that's also fascinating as well. And then there's just a little account of Delia Barry and how she lives her life now. She gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning, she knits till 8:30, then she goes for a walk on the beach with a friend. A local beach in Greystones is on the coast in County Wicklow, and she knits then when she has coffee, looks out at the ocean, at the sea, and then comes back home and knits for a few hours and has dinner, and then knits in the evening. So it just sounds like a fantastic existence. It's my type of existence. If I could afford the time, maybe when I'm a little bit older, I can do that much. But so she's just a phenomenal knitter and really, really loves her craft, and is very, very talented, and she's been recognised in the credits, but I think she should be up for an Oscar as well. I mean, definitely, but who knows, maybe one of the days. So she's also, actually, she knit sweaters for Meryl Streep's character in the film Dancing at Lunasa, which I also mentioned in a previous podcast. So she's got a lot of knitting experience behind her, and just shows you what a whole lifetime of knitting can produce such talent. So hopefully they'll win an Oscar. Let's just wait and see, and the next time I podcast we'll all know, and I'll be able to tell you one way or the other whether the Irish films, either the Banshees of Inisherin or The Quiet Girl, were awarded Oscars. And even if they weren't, the nominations are so massive, they're really huge, and if you ever get a chance to watch those films, I highly recommend them. I've seen them both a couple of times, and they're really worth watching. And I think that is it for this podcast. That's all I have to talk to you about. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you for this time and to be sharing all this information and all about my knitting with you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy St. Patrick's Day if you celebrate it, and I hope you get out there and have lots of fun and see a few parades if they're around. Have a pint of Guinness if you get a chance. Wear your Shamrock. Just paint your hair green, dye your hair green, whatever you do to celebrate, or wear some lovely green knitwear. Take out the green knitwear, and I hope you have a great St. Patrick's Day, and I'll see you next time. I'm just going to put some footage of my holiday in Italy at the end here, and also some recent footage of our neighbourhood during the snowy day or two. We literally had 2 days of snow. It was amazing last week. Made me very happy, and I'll put that at the end. So thanks so much for watching, And please subscribe to the channel if you liked the video, and also click like if you liked it. And thanks a million for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Don't be a stranger in the night. Take a chance for some romance. Don't cover your eyes. Willow trees know you better than anyone else. It's time you let your guard down. For someone like me, I'd say I'm settled and pretty calm. I don't storm in the storm. If not me, then someone like me that knows what to do and how to take care of you. But most of all, that deserves you. The sweetest red cheeks I'd ever seen. You stand beside me in every dream. Angel goddess, you cover them all. Say, what can I do to get you to fall for someone like me? Like me, that knows what to do and how to take care of you. But most of all, that deserves you. It's most of all, that deserves you. It's crucial that he deserves you. He deserves you.